Professor Catherine Angel. I am the BFA in Studio Art Coordinator here at UNLV. The work of this year's BFA class features a spectrum of medium. It includes ceramics, installation, painting, photography, and sculpture.
Began my creative practice several years ago. I primarily considered myself a self-portrait artist in the sense that I was really only interested in both documenting and narrating my own lived experience through a specific lens that didn't really consider the audience in question very much. In fact, for over a year, I curated this docufiction narration of my life that shed light on the ramifications of isolation when we fail to connect with both ourselves and those around us. But then I began to realize that I was relaying the same narrative over and over again, in which I was this broken, dying thing, when I no longer felt that way. You see, the foundation of the work was relaying my life, but I found that I couldn't tell my story without telling misleadings. In fact, what I was really getting at was showcasing the trauma of living in a house that didn't accept me. The push and pull struggle of being torn between two identities. So what began as a project that highlighted the ramifications of isolation then transformed into a study of double consciousness, or the idea that there could be two versions of the self, the one that felt trapped, and the one that was enlightened and proud and powerful.
But the work I focused on this year in the BFA was documenting the life of my family. The photographs are very important to me because this is how I want to remember my family unit: the good, the bad, and the unforgettable. My artist talk today is an audio-visual work. The photographs themselves may omit what might be the unpleasantries of life, but the audio will tell the truth. The audios are narrated by my children who are in the photographs.
I sleep between these two new babies at my childhood home, where I have been abandoned by my partner due to domestic violence. They take my time because my time is my love, and they are all I'm holding on to. I need them more than they need me. I cling to them. Their hair smells of heaven. Their unconditional love for me, their neediness making me so tired. Motherhood is a gift I was blessed with. They are my teachers, and I must stop my selfishness and learn from my mistakes.
At an early age, I developed a fascination with fairy tales and folklore. I'm from a small town in South Dakota and the middle child of 9. But not only am I one of 9 children, I'm also an only child. My parents both had kids before me when they were in high school. They met, got married, had me, divorced, and moved hours apart from each other, eventually remarrying and having more children. I was often left with my grandmothers or other family members, so it makes sense why I turned to these stories for solace and comfort. They became an escape from my chaotic life. It's not just fantastical stories that have helped me understand my place in the world. It's also stories that are passed down generationally, from grandparents to parents to children. These Familial stories have given me something to latch onto. They reassure me of my existence. As my knowledge expanded and my work developed, this interest in fairy tales also grew. I wanted to look deeper into them. Why do I turn to them for answers? Why do I turn to them for comfort? Why has society passed them down for centuries? What makes these stories so important to us?
Cleansing away regrets. I asked random people walking by to sit with me. As I shared a regret in my life with them, I asked them to share one of theirs with me. After the exchange of regrets, I would hand the participant a glass of water. I instructed them that they had the choice to either dump it on their own head and cleanse themselves of their regret, or dump it on mine and cleanse me of mine. This participant asked if we could each take a glass and cleanse each other at the same time. Here is one reaction. He asked if he could dump the water on both of us. I found that most people that had really emotional stories to tell always wanted to dump it on themselves or on both of us.
You can do whatever you choose. Awesome. Don't you feel better now?
Yeah, I do. I actually do a couple of
Awesome.
these. This is great.
I took what I had learned from these experiences and incorporated this into my installation titled Greenhouse Confessional. The participant is asked to write in the journal a confession of something that they regret, and then use the glue stick to seal the page to the previous ones. Again, to relieve the viewer of such guilt and help them to move on and exit this space feeling refreshed.
This piece was done using ink on paper, with text becoming a representation of me. I consider this work a self-portrait because it's an expression of my internal struggles as a multiracial and multicultural individual. Of Peruvian, Italian, Spaniard, African, and German descent. I approached this work in a manner that felt therapeutic and allowed me to navigate these overlapping identities. I was searching for a way to express my thoughts freely, and I chose to overlap text so that it became partially unreadable, as you can see here. Soon after, I was part of an exhibition titled Tasteful Nudes, and when the other artists and I discussed this theme, we realized we were interested in creating a space where the concept of refined nudity could be deconstructed and redefined to be more inclusive about representation. I created two pieces, Self-Portrait 1, which we see here, and Self-Portrait 2, which we will see next. Both are acrylic on panel. These pieces primarily reference the lack of representation of darker skin tones throughout the history of Western art. The piece we see here depicts my skin tone as it is, and the piece here interprets that skin tone through the language that we use when we speak about racial identity. For example, when we refer to someone as black or as white. Since I am multiracial, I become gray in this painting.
When I entered the BFA program in 2019, I knew what type of art I liked, but I couldn't explain why I made the things that I did. I knew I wanted my art to talk about being mixed race, my queerness, and taboo, but I didn't know how to execute that work without feeling overwhelmed by the controversy that's attached to those topics. I focused on ambiguous and stimulating work, and while I felt this direction in my painting and drawing was finally successful again, I made the decision to concentrate my energy into making sculptures instead of 2D art. By returning to ceramics, I had an easier time translating the exaggerated qualities I wanted to produce. And by using clay, I was able to bring my ideas to life and have them exist in reality, versus a painting that would always stay two-dimensional. At this point, I found my stride in ceramics. With these new pieces, I was able to develop my craft and found out that I had the ability to create visually peculiar works that I had been craving for. This sculpture, Meat Hammer, is an example of how my works have steadily developed